So good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Today we have with us a very special guest who has been a versatile entrepreneur, author, and a politician. He comes from a very humble background in Bhagalpur, belonging to a non-political family. Our guest has created his niche in the Indian politics, and that too in the oldest Indian party, Congress. We have with us Mr. Sanjay Jha. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Archer.
We would like to know about your journey in politics. How has it been coming from where you have been from the Xavier's Institute of Management to becoming the national spokesperson of the Congress Party?
Why, in one word, turbulent. Um, if you want me to add another, exciting. A third one, well, it's been topsy-turvy. But bottom line, you learn from every experience. I was like anybody else, a boring corporate banker. And then I launched my own ventures. But eventually I do believe that you go where your heart wills you to. And very often they say about us Biharis, that you can take a Bihari out of politics, but you can't take politics out of him. And therefore, to a great extent, I am an exhibition or a proof of that very popular metaphor.
Wonderful. So, who was the inspiration for joining politics and what was the turning point?
Well, as I write in my book, The Great Unraveling India After 2014, my book starts actually with an example of my interview in the XLRI campus in Jamshedpur, when a very popular foreign bank, which was the hottest job on the campus, shortlisted me for the final round of interview. And the last question that I was asked was, Mr. Jha, if we give you a choice of having a meal with somebody of your preference, living or dead, who would you invite for dinner? And honestly, Harsha, as I've written in the book, I wasn't prepared for this question. But the answer I gave came to me almost naturally. Frankly, I didn't even have to scratch my head. So I was very briefly stunned. And then out came the answer, Mahatma Gandhi. So, when in today's day and age, when I find a lot of people talking about Gandhi and Nehru, and many of them just do name dropping, because I think India's begun to quickly abandon the principles that Gandhiji and Pandit Nehru stood for. But I think I happen to be, despite living in Mumbai and wearing ripped jeans, I happen to be pretty much an old-fashioned guy, I guess. I'm pretty much a Gandhi and Nehru in my ideology. So if you were to ask me for my inspiration to be in public life, definitely Gandhi and Nehru, Gandhi principally. But in more recent times, because I was in my 20s when Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister of India. He was pretty new. He was untested, as many people say. He was part of the dynastic story. But there was a certain genuine freshness about him. In 1984, when I was around 23, and so now you know my age, Rajiv Gandhi came across as a real outlier in Indian politics, not just because of the accords and all he struck, because he spoke a very different language. So he was at the Cricket Club of India in Mumbai when he made that famous speech of his, where he said that out of every 100 or 100 paisa which is distributed by the government, only 15 reaches the actual beneficiary. Now, how many politicians in our country are willing to say so very candidly and admit to corruption in the system, especially when the Congress at that time was the only party barring, the post-emergency period, which had been governing India. So there was a lot of expectation from him, and I do admit to the fact that my last trigger of interest in politics happened thereafter with Rajiv Gandhi.
Would I say that he was the turning point for you to join politics, meeting him?
Well, I never ended up meeting him, but I was there in Delhi on the night that he got assassinated. And I remember standing near India Gate, as his martyred, slain body was taken all the way down for cremation. And there was a certain poignancy to the moment, because a lot of us believe that he would probably be the harbinger of a big new modern India. Not just about the computers he brought in or the telecom revolution. There was a definite spring in his step. Now, he was still learning while on the job, but there was an earnestness about him that you could not, frankly, ignore. So when I saw his body in that coffin, it was a very disturbing sight. And I think for a lot of us in that generation, there was an awakening of sorts that this country is far too great and outstanding to become one where violence becomes a way of life, where retribution of sorts is what will probably, you know, maybe create its destiny. And one tried to kind of fathom as to what is the life of people in politics who take such crazy risks, but at the same time, they are capable of turning a nature, the complete dimensions and direction of a country's future altogether. And I think that to me was very fascinating. So yes, in a number of ways, Rajiv Gandhi's extraordinary rise to power and his brutal assassination turned out to be for us experiences that we could not ignore.
Wonderful, and we all fondly remember him too.
Yeah.
You've been an exemplary, outspoken national spokesperson of the oldest political party in India, the Indian National Congress, and have witnessed a number of highs and lows. If a youth wants to pursue a career in politics as a spokesperson, what are your advices? What have been the pros and cons?
What kind of advice would I give to a young person who wants to be in politics? Well, if you want to be a public face of the party, I would just say read, read, and read. To be a good spokesperson is not about being flamboyant in the use of English or Hindi. It's not about looking smart or very attractive. I think the larger option is you should be very well informed, and not just informed. One should have an analytical bent of mind. Very often I find that there are very wide variety of people who are interested to get into politics because they think it just is very glamorous. You become well known, people begin to recognize you. I don't deny these are highs in politics, but to succeed in it is hard work, very hard work, Harsha. It's far from as glamorous as it looks from the outside. You burn the midnight oil. I don't think I've worked in foreign banks, which once upon a time were considered to be those who treated you like mules or donkeys and made you slog out till dawn. And I used to think that we were the ultimate cat's whisker. The burnout syndrome was supposed to be the big smart feeling. Hey, I'm burnt out because I was up till 2 in the night. And you felt like, wow, I'm the cat's whiskers. I'm next day in the morning at work at 9. But you realize in politics, people work insane hours and they work day and night, night out. And more important is the fact that whatever you do influences millions of people's lives. So I would say that if you want to be in politics, get ready for hard work. It's a tough one. It is absolutely brutal. It is one where you need to have you need to be tremendously self-driven, and you have to have a thick skin. Probably watch Crocodile Dundee and get inspired by the texture of that alligator or the crocodile, whatever you want to choose. But it's a tough one. To be a good spokesperson, I would say be extremely well read and be bilingual. So don't just know English, know Hindi as well. तो आपको दोनों भाषाओं पर एक तरीके से आपका जो है उनकी जानकारी, आप कैसे हिंदी बोलते हैं या अंग्रेजी कैसे बोलते हैं. You have to know both the languages very well, and then of course if you know your regional language, even better. Last but not the least, I would say be fit, because people just believe that in politics you can afford to have a big fat punch, and you can eat all the samosas and chips, and keep popping in gulab jamuns at every dhaba that you go to. Ultimately, what are you there for, man? You got to be fit. You got to be energetic, right? How can you be that if you are just like unhealthy and you haven't slept well and then you'll be irritable and you'll go in front of a microphone and say something bizarre, or you look hot tempered, you will make a complete jackass of yourself. So I would say that it is important to be fit, but then you exude a different kind of confidence and exuberance. And, and I think at the end of the day, that's what will make you more palatable.
Wonderful. That's a great advice for us all. You also initiated the All India Professionals Congress. Would you like to share a little bit more on this?
Well, Harsha, you'll make Shashi Tharoor very upset. Shashi is the one who basically, brainchilded this, if I can call it that. It came out of his lab, but I was amongst his first few guinea pigs. So, he got me into the system. I became the head for Maharashtra, probably the biggest state where corporate executives are concerned. And the whole purpose behind the All India Professionals Congress was to try and establish contact with urban India. It is very often correctly understood that politicians ignore urban India because they only believe that the votes come from the rural belts. That's where the majority of India lives. And people focus only on the poor and the farmers and, the real tier 3 and 4 or tier 2 and 3 places. But the fact is that I think very often the middle class is ignored. Middle class actually gets sandwiched somewhere in between. And the Congress recognized this belatedly, that we needed to talk to the urban taxpayer, chartered accountants, doctors, teachers, corporate executives, professionals, the whole works, chartered accountants, people in fashion, people in media, blah, blah. And I was asked to head the Maharashtra part of it. And therefore, I do feel that somewhere it is a great initiative. It is a very exciting initiative. And I'm very glad that I made Maharashtra, until I was there, the biggest in the country. I noticed, Harsha, somebody behind you just had a great swim. Huh?
Well, there are so many people. What do I do? You have been an author, reader, and have also written many articles and books on cricket and politics. Your latest book, Great Unraveling India After 2014. What was the inspiration behind it? And
go ahead.
What do you want to communicate, like a message that you want to give?
Well, I'm very happy to share with all of you and with your viewers and everyone else who logs onto this now or later, that the Great Unraveling India After 2014 has turned out to be, right from the time it has been launched, is done very, very well, is open to good reviews. I've been very privileged to have the Nobel laureate, Dr. Amartya Sen, endorse my book. So that for me actually is the biggest compliment I may have received in my whole life. One of the people who I think is not just a great economist, he's one of the most respected public intellectuals worldwide. So that came as a massive boost to my confidence. I do feel, Harsha, that if I were to answer as to what triggered the book, it was to look at how India had begun to change in the last 6 years. And I believe that, you can never take your democracy for granted. And trust me, Joe Biden is not the only one who said it yesterday when he got, the presidency at his inauguration. Democracies are fragile. The biggest mistake we all make, whether in Britain, whether in India or America.
Or should not there be opposition, like what happened in US? The type of things which happen. In these circumstances, how do you analyze this situation? And what will be advice to all the generations? I'm not talking about young people only. Everybody is confused. So how do we come out of this confusion?
Well, frankly, I would just say one thing, that if the country does not have a strong opposition, democracy is going to be, over a period of time, obliterated. That's how demagogues become authoritarian and they assume full control. So I think this is a big worry for India, that India has a very weak opposition. The Congress is principally responsible for not fighting hard enough. And you see what the BJP is doing, it's weakening all the institutions, it's challenging the constitution. And today, every institution that matters is looking highly compromised. And that is, in my opinion, a very disconcerting worry for all of us Indians. My suggestion will be that you need a very independent media. Now, the media is controlled by corporates, and corporates are usually beholden to the powers that be. So don't expect too much from them. But at the same time, you have to hope that all those who are fighting tooth and nail, whether on mainstream or social media, we are able to call a spade a spade. Remember this, if you get scared, the government will actually frighten you into a black hole. You know, you got to learn how to speak up. I mean, you have a comedian arrested for what? I mean, nobody knows what for. I mean, you know, suddenly in India, we get offended over everything. I mean, there are fundamental rights that we have as citizens, and no state can take that away. And I think, therefore, the time has come for political parties to come together and protest. You see, India has forgotten to protest until the farmers have done last year in December and continue to do so. And the protests that happened over the CA and the NRC and the NPR. You see, the right to protest, the right to dissent, the right to debate, discuss, hash out is exactly what democracy is all about. And I think at all levels, there need to be more dialogue and more conversations. So my big recommendation towards saving Indian democracy is that opposition political parties need to speak up. They need to organize protests, not just keep tweeting about it. They need to kind of go and engage with the common people of India. They need to take up issues, not just go and attack Prime Minister Modi. He seems to have carved a certain, niche for himself, and people, even if they're unhappy with the economy and the coronavirus and the migrant crisis, they still vote him because they say, hey, there is no alternative. But I think we need to change the narrative. There is no such thing as an indispensable leader. No political party always wins. No political party always loses. The BJP is going to lose sooner rather than later, maybe 2024, and there will be an opposition that will come to power. The question is that we need to be engaged. Sir, like you, Harsha, Saurabh, whoever else is watching this program, be engaged, be active, speak up. But if you're going to be, we are going to behave like, people who are going to run into a hole and we are just like chickens and we are cowards, then I'm sorry, nothing is going to change. Please remember, in America, people went out there and took on Donald Trump. They took on Donald Trump. He thought he was going to win this election. He lost it. He may have won 70 million votes, but he still lost by 7 million votes. So I think we need to recognize that you need to be out there, you need to participate, not just vote in an election, but go out there and participate on issues of societies and the nation's concern.
आपकी मुझे बाइलिंगुअल वाली बात बहुत अच्छी लगी, क्योंकि आप बिहार से हैं, आप मुंबई आए, आपने जिंदगी में बहुत सारे उतार चढ़ाव देखे। तो मैं ये जानना चाहूंगा कि एक व्यक्ति को, अगर सौरभ को अपनी जिंदगी में कुछ डिसीजन लेने हैं, तो उसमें क्या ध्यान रखना चाहिए?
देखिए, मैं तो सबसे पहले ये कहूंगा कि सबसे बड़ा जो किसी भी युवा के लिए जो एक तरीके से एक जिंदगी का एक दौर में जो समझना बहुत ही अनिवार्य है, वो ये है कि हर चीज आप अपने आप नहीं कर पाएंगे। देखिए, आपने अभी देखा होगा कि ब्रिस्बेन के गाबा में भारत ने ऑस्ट्रेलिया को कैसे हराया। इसके बारे में चर्चा सालों तक होगी कि जिस टीम में 11 खिलाड़ी तैयार नहीं थे खेलने के लिए, क्योंकि कुछ लोगों को चोट लगा था और बाकी लोग एक तरीके से उनके पास उतना प्रैक्टिस भी नहीं था मैच के लिए। वो लोग इतना एक बुलंद टीम, इतना मजबूत टीम को उन्होंने उन्हीं के जमीन पर हराया है। क्यों? क्योंकि देखिए, एक गेंदबाज या एक बल्लेबाज के बहुत ही अहम प्रदर्शन से कोई टीम नहीं जीतता है, सबको योगदान करना पड़ता है। तो आज के जो युवा लोग हैं वो बहुत, देखिए हमारे देश में एक नया कल्चर है, एक मिलेनियल कल्चर है ऑफ इंडिविजुअलिज्म। ये दिस इज एन अमेरिकन इम्पोर्ट इनटू इंडिया वेयर वी बिलीव कि हम लोग सब अपने आप ही में सब कुछ कर पाएंगे, लेकिन वो होता नहीं है। तो आप यदि आज युवा हैं तो मैं आपसे अनुरोध करूंगा कि आप, एक तजुर्बा आपको जिंदगी सिखाएगा, लेकिन हमेशा ये याद करके रखिए कि आपको दूसरों के साथ काम करना पड़ेगा। और जब आप दूसरों के साथ काम करते हैं, चाहे वो महिला हो, चाहे वो दलित हो, चाहे वो मुसलमान हो, चाहे वो गरीब हो, मतभेद मत लाइए। जात, धर्म, इसका कोई महत्व नहीं होता। समझ गए हैं? भारतीय टीम में देखिए हर राज्य का कोई ना कोई व्यक्ति भारत के लिए खेलता है। आप नहीं पूछते हैं कि उसका धर्म क्या है। 26/11 में जब बम्बई के ताज और ओबरॉय में हमला हुआ था तो किसी ने पूछा क्या कि नेशनल सिक्योरिटी कमांडोज में जो लोग हैं वो कौन से धर्म का है, या बिहार का है या हिमाचल का है या तमिलनाडु का है? जब हमें जरूरी पड़ता है तो हमें कोई संकोच नहीं। बाकी समय जो लोग राजनीति में है वो हिंदू मुसलमान क्यों ले आते हैं भाई? वो दलित के पीछे क्यों लग जाते हैं? वो ये महाराष्ट्र में क्यों बात करते हैं कि ये बिहार का है या उत्तर प्रदेश का है? क्या फर्क पड़ता है? भारतीय है ना लोग। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि आज के युवा लोगों को, सौरभ जैसे लोगों को ये समझना पड़ेगा, कल चाहे आप क्रिकेट खेलें, आप बड़ी कंपनी बनाएं, आप IAS में हो जाएं, आप राजनीति में आ जाएं, हमेशा याद करके रखिएगा कि भारत में सबको एक साथ लेके आगे बढ़ना पड़ेगा। ये भाषण से नहीं होगा कि सबका साथ सबका विकास। ये आपको अपने कार्य से, अपने लक्षण से और अपने मंशा और नियत को जमीन पर लाना पड़ेगा। यदि वो आप कर पाए तो आपको आसमान तक पहुंचने में कोई नहीं रोक पाएगा।
Very nice, very nice.
Very well said, sir.
Thank
May
you.
I request Saurabh to ask his set of questions?
Hello, sir. This is Saurav Acharya. Thank you for your encouraging words. Sir, my question to you is that, sir, what tips would you like to give to the younger generation, like the youths, who want to join politics? And do we need to have a political background to like have a good, successful career in politics? So, because it is mostly seen that like those who have a family background are into politics mostly. Their son or daughter are into politics.
Well, sort of. Firstly, you don't need to have any family in politics. I don't have any. And while dynastic leaders usually make a lot of news, please remember the majority of politicians in the country don't have a dynastic background. So that's the first part. It's true, however, that if you have a relative, it gives people a head start. And in my opinion, fundamentally, you cannot stop somebody just because somebody's father or brother or sister is in politics. So let it be a free enterprise system. Anybody can get in. But if you don't have somebody in politics, it doesn't become necessarily a stumbling block. But to answer your question, I have answered it before. I think Harsha asked me the same thing. My simple advice to you will be that if you want to be in politics, be engaged on public issues. Don't just look at companies and balance sheets. Don't just look at taking up a job in a startup or going to work with Goldman Sachs. Then look at why Manrega works or doesn't. Why is Aadhaar efficient or it's not? What is the problem with India's maybe health infrastructure? How would you improve issues on climate change? How will you ensure that companies contribute to political parties in a transparent fashion? More important, how will you remove poverty? How will you combat terrorism? There are many issues of public interest. Get involved with those issues. And more importantly, after that, be a very interested reader. Take a lot of interest in reading on policies, follow people, read biographies of eminent people in politics across the world, not just Indian leaders. And you'll see that it's tough work. So if you are willing to stay for the long haul and you got a thick skin and you're determined to hang in there and work very hard, then I think if you're in politics and you pursue it, who knows what tomorrow could throw up as an opportunity for you. But you need a resolute determination. And if you have that, good luck.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thanks, Harsha.
Thank you, sir. Any final message to all of us?
Well, all I say is that 2021 looks to be a very promising year, Harsha. I think 2020 is behind us. The vaccines have been rolled out. India may see a recovery in terms of the economy. Hopefully, life will be back to square one. People will stop wearing masks. And I think by the mid of this year, life could go back to being normal. My only advice to everybody will be, don't forget the lessons of 2020. And 2020 taught us one thing. Don't take anything for granted. Don't take your environment for granted. Don't take anything for granted. And learn from that the one thing that I believe makes the biggest difference: humility. That we think we are, bigger than everyone else, but it takes one invisible virus to cripple the world. And therefore, I think we should always be humble and be very open-minded to change. and more importantly, be prepared for any situation and have a plan B ready.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you with us today.
So nice, sir.
We look forward to seeing you back on television channels, debating, arguing, and everything, and see you live in action in politics.
Thank you very much, Harsha. I promise that I will not let you down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Bye.
you, sir.